So, the end of Native Americans and the US military fighting happens in the year 1890. This is the last fight, physical fight, between the US military and the Sioux tribe. And they call this the Battle of Wounded Knee. A lot of people call it the Massacre at Wounded Knee. Um, but this was like many sad stories from this time. 300 people, men, women, and children, were slaughtered, not totally prepared to fight. It's clear that they were unarmed, potentially unarmed, and sort of attacked by the US military. And this kind of brings a close to the time where natives were going to put up any kind of a fight or any kind of physical resistance. And this is a good time to play the Brain Pop video about the massacre at Wounded Knee. Okay. Moving forward here. So as the plains land is being cleared, settlers are moving out, and some of the first settlers, if you can call them settlers, were cowboys or vaqueros. Not cowboys like we think of them maybe on old TV shows that we've seen or old westerns. Um, this was very unglamorous. They didn't like hang out at the saloon or something like that. They're mostly like hanging out with a bunch of cows, and they herd cows. Herd is a fancy word for like moving a large group of something. And they herd these cows for like hundreds of miles across the plains. And so it's kind of a stinky job. I don't know if you guys have ever driven like by the 5 freeway. If you go up north and you kind of come across all the cows, I mean, it's like kind of gross. And so this was their job. They kind of like stayed with these cows, made sure the cows got to market so that they could be sold and then eventually slaughtered and sold as meat. This job is created because, and we're going to look at this in the next chapter, but on the East Coast at the same time, cities are growing. People are moving off of their farms and into cities, and that means that many people, for the first time, have to transition from growing their food or raising their food to just purchasing it because they don't have the land or the resources to create their own food. So there's actually this new demand in the East Coast for sort of like ready made beef. And so the cows become very lucrative. There's a lot of money that can be made as these cowboys can raise these cows and move them, drive them, they call it the drive, to these railroad stations, and they would be transported to the east to then be slaughtered. And we'll take a closer look at this stuff next chapter. But several famous trails and towns spring up. Some of the cow towns are Abilene, Kansas, and one of the most famous trails is the Chisholm Trail. There is in your book, if you can reference it, another handy map. And I believe, if I didn't change it, this map is also on the test of kind of these trails. It's on page 209 of your book, and you can kind of take a quick look at some of the different cattle trails that they would use to get these cows to rail lines, and then they would be put on rail lines to go to the eastern cities. There is one last slide here that talks about a day in the life of a cowboy, and that this work is really dirty and outdoorsy, 10 to 14 hours again with animals who kind of like smell, and you're with all these sort of stinky cows. There's not running water. They didn't stay at hotels. They're just kind of like sleeping with, kind of next to, alongside their horses and their cows. And it's incredibly dirty. It would take a number of months to round up these cows, raise the cows, brand the cows so that when they got to the railroads, they knew who to pay, like which cow belonged to who. And then they, for a number of months, 3 months, they would basically out on the road or not the road, out on the plains, like getting these cows to the railroad tracks. And this sort of comes to an end with the invention of barbed wire. That idea of like an open range where you can just move cows across open country. As more settlers start to fill in the West, they start to mark their territory with barbed wire, and it makes it impossible for cowboys to kind of get to or get across all this open land because it's no longer open. Okay, it's a little bit about what's happening on the prairies. And yeah, there is a video now at this time from John Green. So minutes, I think 1 through 8 of the John Green video. Thank you very much.